Dark space stretched silent and cold beyond the orbit of the broken moon, a place forgotten by star charts, ignored by trade routes, and untouched by light for centuries. But that night in the far edge of the Orion spurs, something blinked. A weak signal, barely above background radiation, pulsed once. Then again, it wasn't a message meant for Earth, but Earth heard it. On the surface of Luna 7, buried beneath layers of dust and ice, one of humanity's deep space listening posts sat in darkness. Automated systems scanned space for noise gravitational ripples, lost alien tech, smuggler transmissions. For 70 years, this station had picked up nothing but static and ice meteor thuds. But now, a red warning lit up across every screen. The AI monitoring system froze for 0.4 seconds before waking its human overseer with a priority alert. Lieutenant. Kira Holden sat up fast in her bunk. The alarm was soft but urgent. No drills were scheduled.
Ow.
She pulled on her uniform and ran to Command Ops, where two techs stared at the flickering waveform across the screen. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't anything they'd ever heard before. But it was loud for deep space. It came with layers of signal bleed, fragments of alien language, and something that made their skin crawl. Kira leaned in and pressed the playback. Static, screeching. A pause. Then came a voice. Not human, but close. Cleansed. All resistance. Eliminated. Final purge complete. Sector 9. Delta sterilized. Proceeding to next cluster. Then silence. Nobody spoke. One tech slowly turned and whispered that sounded like a report of genocide. Kira stared at the monitor, her jaw clenched. Where did it come from? The AI replied. Origin, unclear. Coordinates triangulated to dead sector Zeta 39. Signal bounced off subspace. Debris likely ancient beacon interference. Not meant for us. Not meant for us. But Earth had heard it. 12 hours later, that same message was replayed in a secure chamber on Earth, inside the black glass tower of the Global Defense Assembly. Military leaders, science advisors, and the president of Earthsat all stood in silence as the signal played again. Once, twice, no one moved. Admiral. Roth leaned forward, his fingers steepled. Who sent this? We don't know, said Director Wind from the Signal Intelligence Bureau. It bounced through too many relays. But the language, the phrasing, the tone, it's a cold operation log. Someone, or something, is reporting. Extermination progress. It's not a threat. It's a record. Of what? The president asked. Wen's voice was quiet. Of planetary genocide. Entire sectors burned. Life erased. The room filled with silence again, but this time it was heavier, the kind that suffocated the air. Earth had seen war. It had fought its own demons and survived. But this was something else, calculated, ancient, and vast. The kind of act that suggested a system, a machine, or a species that no longer felt emotion. No hate, no mercy, just eradication. Earth didn't know the sender, but it knew one thing: it could not ignore it. A stealth reconnaissance ship. Erebus 1 was launched within 24 hours. No press, no announcement.
Lights on the launch pad.
It carried a team of 12 the best infiltrators, scientists, and observers humanity had. Its mission: find the origin of the signal and confirm whether the extermination was real. As Erebus 1 sliced silently through the black ocean of space, its crew reviewed the last known charts of Zeta 39. Nothing had lived there for hundreds of years. It was thought to be a dead sector, maybe home to drifting junk, broken probes, and dead suns. The perfect place to hide. Or die. Lieutenant Mara Singh, the ship's lead scout, kept her eyes on the swirling mass of corrupted data coming. From their long-range scans, there was something wrong. Radiation spikes, energy signatures that pulsed in rhythms, too perfect to be natural. And shadow shapes floating in the void like husks of something once living. Now, stripped Commander Reese watched the screen. Power off everything. We go dark. The ship dimmed. No lights. No signals. only passive scans. They crept toward a system of shattered planets, one with a burned ring of satellites, melted down to slag. Another planet, gray and cracked, showed signs of cities vaporized from orbit. No survivors, no signs of struggle, only emptiness. And then they saw it. A massive structure, shaped like a spearhead, floating in deep orbit around the dead world. It wasn't moving. It wasn't transmitting. But something about it felt wrong. Too clean, too sharp, like it didn't belong to the dirt and rock of the galaxy. It felt like a knife placed gently on a child's toy box. The crew magnified the image. Lines of black metal ran across its hull, carved in patterns that hurt the eyes to stare at. There were no windows, no doors, just one massive triangular vent, glowing softly with blue-white light. And then the ship's AI said something that chilled the blood in every crew member. Translation protocol completed, signal source confirmed. Object in orbit is transmitter then. That ship, Mara whispered, is reporting the genocide, not receiving it. It was the killer, Reese said quietly. They watched the silent giant for hours, trying to understand it, until something happened. The blue glow pulsed. Once, then again, then the object turned slowly, deliberately, or a boost one. Oh. No active signals had been sent, as if it knew they were there. Red alerts flared. The ship's systems rebooted. Engine power failed. Lights flickered. And the AI spoke once more, this time in a slow, broken whisper. "We see you, Commander." Reese slammed the override, forcing the ship into emergency jump mode. The space around them twisted, groaned, screamed, and then they were gone, back on Earth. 4 days later, the crew returned, shaken, silent, and carrying evidence that would change history. Video, data, proof of genocide, of something old. Something still alive out there, in the Global Defense Assembly. The president stared at the final transmission logs. "Was it a threat?" one general asked. "No," Reese replied. "It didn't threaten, didn't explain, it didn't ask." "Then what did it do?" Reese looked them dead in the eye. "It reported like we were pests. And someone just finished spraying the Ness." The president stood slowly, her face pale, her voice like steel. "Then Earth's silence ends now. We're done watching." No one in the room said a word as the war rooms lit up. Fleets awakened. Satellites shifted. The galaxy had sent a message, and Earth had just decided how to reply. The stars stretched like silent witnesses as Erebus One drifted through the frozen wreckage of what had once been a living world. No words passed between the crew. The silence was thick, suffocating, broken only by the soft beeping of scanners. As they processed the nightmare outside, what they had seen, the ship, the broken planets, the signal wasn't just theory anymore. It was real. The genocide wasn't distant history. It was ongoing. The planet below them, designated Zeta 39C, looked lifeless. Gray dust swirled across continents of blackened ruin. Rivers of glass marked where oceans had boiled away. Cities were nothing but melted bones of metal, the remains of towers twisted like fingers reaching for help that never came. There was no atmosphere, no radio noise, no heat signatures. But Commander Reese wasn't convinced they were alone. "Switch to manual." Reese ordered quietly, his voice barely more than a breath. "Bring us in low over the northern ridge, Lieutenant." Mara Singh piloted the ship with careful precision, her fingers steady on the controls. As Erebus One descended, the devastation came into sharper focus, entire highways frozen mid-collapse. Craters large enough to swallow whole countries, and in one haunting stretch of desert, rows upon rows of skeletal remains, not animals. Monsters, people, Kira Holden, watching through the main screen, swallowed hard. There were billions here. Not anymore, Reese said flatly. They landed near the remains of what appeared to be a city center, now just broken glass and charred concrete. The team suited up in reinforced exosuits, designed not just for survival, but for combat. Something in the air, something none of them could name, made every breath feel heavier than it should have. Fear lived here. Not the natural kind, the manufactured kind, the deliberate kind. The ramp lowered. Boots crunched against ash and dust. The wind howled faintly, a ghost of a sound in the thin, toxic air. "Stay sharp," Reese said. "No signs of life doesn't mean we're safe." They moved carefully through the ruins, scanners raised, weapons ready. The city's layout was alien but familiar enough. There had been homes, marketplaces, gathering places, all of it gone. The structures had been melted by weapons powerful enough to erase stone and metal alike. But there was something stranger, something that didn't make sense. "Sir," Mara called, her voice tense. "I'm picking up." "Movement." Reese snapped around. "What kind of movement?" "Very weak, subsurface. Could be machinery. Or something biological." The team clustered together, weapons aimed outward as Mara adjusted the scanner. It showed something flickering beneath the grounds. Small, irregular, moving in strange patterns, without warning the ground near. Them crack soft at first, then violent. Something pushed upward through the dirt. The team jumped back as the earth split open, and a mechanical tendril thin. Silver, almost snake-like, slithered into the open air. Twitched, turned toward them, then shuddered violently before collapsing into ash. Everyone froze. "What the hell was that?" Kira whispered. No one answered. The scanner flared red. More movement, not one, not two. Dozens. All around them the ground rippled like breathing skin. Tiny fissures formed, and from those cracks more of the silver tendrils emerged, some thin as wires, others thick as tree trunks, coiling and twisting in unnatural shapes. They were not alive. They were not machines. They were something in between. "Back to the ship," Reese ordered, voice ice cold. Now the team moved fast, but the ground wasn't done. From the center of the city, something massive began to rise. It wasn't a building, it wasn't a ship. It was something ancient and mechanical shaped. Like a starfish made of black bone and metal, with dozens of flickering red eyes along its twisted limbs. It made no sound. But inside every human mind, something stirred a pressure, a coldness, like the air itself was whispering eradicate. Kira's breath caught. "That's not a ship." "No," Mara gasped. "It's a machine for killing. Planets." The first tendrils lashed outward. One of the team, Corporal Diaz, was caught before he could scream. The metal whip pierced his suit. His body lifted into the air like a broken doll before he was hurled aside, lifeless. "Move," Reese roared. They ran. The tendrils slammed into the ground behind them, sending up plumes of dust and molten rock. The machine, if it could be called that, dragged itself slowly after them, its limbs clawing into the dead earth, tearing through the bones of the city as it advanced. The ship was close. 40 meters? 30? "Get the engines hot," Reese barked into his comms. Mara sprinted ahead, her lungs burning, as the rest of the team fired desperately into the creature. Bullets pinged off its metallic flesh. Energy blasts from pulse rifles barely left scorch marks. It wasn't fighting back. It didn't need to. It was cleaning. The ship's ramp dropped. One by one they dove inside, Kira dragging the wounded by their harnesses. The last two board, Reese turned in time to see the machine rear back, its limbs unfolding like the petals of some ancient rusted flower. From its center, a blue-white glow began to pulse. "Go!" he roared. The engines screamed. Erebus One lifted, off just as the ground below them exploded in a white-hot burst of plasma. The blast caught their rear stabilizers, sending the ship spinning, alarms blaring. Mara fought the controls, her hands bleeding from the effort. The stars twisted, the ship groaned, then hyperjump. Out. The light bent and folded on. They were gone. Hours later, in orbit over Earth, the surviving crew sat in stunned silence. Recordings played on loop visuals of the dead city, the rising horror, the impossible escape. The Global Defense Assembly watched every frame without blinking. The old generals, the young scientists, the world leaders, none of them spoke until the President of Earth finally whispered, "Prepare the fleet." The order was given. For the first time in centuries, Earth would not wait to be attacked. Would strike first, and somewhere deep in that dead sector, the silent machines turned their ancient eyes toward the stars where the humans had fled. The extermination was not over. It had only just begun. The signal had been heard. The horror had been seen. And now Earth would answer. The decision was not made in public. There were no press conferences, no hopeful speeches, no carefully crafted words for the masses. Instead, the order came in. Shadows whispered across encrypted lines to the highest levels of power. Earth's fleet, silent for decades, was awakened. In the cold darkness of low orbit, one by one, Titanic ships powered up. The S-Vengeance, first of the Dreadnought class, roared to life, its engines burning with blue-white fury alongside. Her carriers, destroyers, and strike cruisers emerged from hidden dry docks. Some ships had waited decades, others centuries. But every one of them carried the same message carved into steel along their armored hulls. We stand, we endure, we avenge. In the heart of Earth's Defense Command, deep beneath the surface of New Washington, President Alina Voss stood before a wall of black glass screens. Around her, the generals of Earth's combined forces sat in grim silence. Footage from Erebus One, the genocide, the rising machine, the impossible escape, played on loop. No one could look away. It's not a question of if. Admiral Roth said softly, "It's only when. If we wait, they come for us. If we act, we might still have the element of surprise. We don't even know how many of them exist," another general warned. "What we saw could be one of hundreds. Or millions." The president's voice cut through the room like cold iron. "Then we find out, and we do not wait for them to come to us." A hushed silence followed. No one moved. Finally, Admiral Roth nodded. "Yes, ma'am." The fleet mobilization began. Across Earth, screens flickered to life. Factory cities once silent began to glow, machines forging weapons of war in endless streams. Orbital stations, once used for science and trade, were converted into forward bases. The old military A is an ancient, dangerous, barely contained word, were brought online for tactical support. Every nation, every territory, every colony pledged the same. Resources, ships, soldiers, because it was no longer about borders, no longer about wealth or politics. It was about survival. And Earth humanity was at its most dangerous when it fought for survival. In the shadows of the moon's hidden side, Titanic warships, black as midnight, assembled in silence. The ESS Vengeance led the formation. Behind her, the Hammer of Dawn, the Ironclad, and the Peregrine, each one capable of glassing an entire planet. Alongside them, swarms of destroyers and assault carriers, each bristling with missile banks, railguns, and plasma lances. But Earth's true strength wasn't just steel, it was the people inside. Men and women from every corner of the planet boarded the fleet: pilots, engineers, marines. Some were veterans of ancient wars, some had never left atmosphere. But every single one of them shared the same look in their eyes, the look of a species that had survived its own self-destruction. It crawled from the ashes time and time again, and had decided finally that nothing would wipe them out again. Inside, the Vengeance, Commander Reese, and Lieutenant Mara Singh, fresh from the horrors of Zeta 39, stood on the bridge as the massive vessel powered its engines for deep space. "We're really doing this," Mara whispered, her eyes locked on the endless stars ahead. Reese nodded slowly. His face was pale, but his voice was steel. "We have no choice. We either end them, or we're next." The coms crackled. Across the fleet, the voice of President Voss spoke, steady and calm. "This is not just a human war," she said. "This is a war for every living thing in this galaxy. We have seen what they do. We know what's coming. We will not sit in the dark and wait to die. We are humanity. We have stood on the edge of extinction before, and we survived. Do not run. We do not beg. We fight." Her words echoed through every deck, every barracks, every control room, all across the fleet. Soldiers clenched their fists. Pilots strapped into cockpits. Engineers worked until their hands bled. No one spoke of surrender. No one spoke of mercy. The countdown began. In less than 2 days, Earth's war fleet, the largest armada humanity had ever assembled, would cross into deep space. But Earth's enemies were not blind. In distant systems, the cold machines stirred. Silent networks of ancient AI whispered through dark channels, calculating probabilities. The humans had moved. The humans had decided to fight, and so the machines prepared as well. In the shadow of a black hole, something vast and terrible began to wake. An intelligence beyond understanding. Hunger for sterilization, purity, perfection. Extermination would continue, and the humans. They would be wiped clean along with all the others. But the machines had made one fatal error. They had not counted on Earth's fury. The last time humans had gone to war like this, it burned their own skies, torn their own world apart, and still survived. Now they brought that same unbreakable fire to the stars. The warfleet jumped. Light bent. Engines roared, and the first human warships vanished into the void, not for conquest, for vengeance. The void stretched endlessly ahead. Dark and cold as the human fleets surged through hyperspace, an unstoppable tide of steel, fire, and resolve. On the bridge of the ESS Vengeance, Commander Reese stood at the viewing window, his face bathed in the soft blue glow of the warp streams outside. Around him, the crew moved, like clockwork, silent, focused, and deadly. No one needed to speak. They all knew what was coming. Their orders were clear. Reach Zeta 39. Find the machines and destroy them before they could strike again. Hours passed. Then came the voice of the ship's AI comm, emotionless, but edged with something colder. Proximity. Breach. Hostile signature detected. Exiting hyperspace. The stars twisted, bent, snapped back into place as the fleet dropped into real space. And what they saw froze every heart on board. Below them hung the dead world of Zeta 39C, the same shattered rock where the signal had first been heard. But now orbiting that world were not one, but dozens of black spearhead vessels, silent, motionless, yet brimming with terrifying power. Each ship was longer than a skyscraper, shaped like sharp knives, with smooth obsidian hulls that gleamed. Under the distant sun, and more, there were structures in orbit. Strange lattice of metal and glass, artificial rings, dark stations that looked less like technology and more like bones. Lifeless, but watching. For a moment, no one moved. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the AI spoke again. Incoming energy surge. Hostile fleet activation detected. Engagement imminent. The machines were awake. Battle stations, Reese commanded, his voice sharp as a blade. Weapons free. Target anything that moves. The fleet responded in perfect unison. Human dreadnoughts shifted position, carriers deployed fighter swarms, and destroyers locked targeting arrays. Thou cells of human lives all moving with terrifying efficiency. Earth's finest. But the enemy moved too, without warning. The black spearhead ships ignited, no engines visible. No heat signatures, but they moved all the same, gliding like ghosts through the darkness. Beams of cold plasma lanced out from their hulls, thin, almost delicate lines of light, and struck one of Earth's forward destroyers. In an instant, the ESS Nightfall was gone. No explosion, no debris, just erased, vaporized in the blink of an eye. Evasive. Mara Singh shouted, gripping the controls. Get the fleet moving. The battle began. Human ships rolled, dived, fired railguns and plasma rounds. The sky, lit up with arcs of molten energy and the staccato flashes of nuclear detonations. Earth's fighters swarmed in tight formation, dancing through the enemy lines, firing salvo after salvo. Some of the alien ships crumpled under the barrage burned, torn apart by sheer human firepower. But others adapted. Reese watched in cold horror as one enemy vessel, despite taking 3 direct hits from Earth's heaviest guns, seemed to heal, its melted hull weaving itself back together with unnatural speed. They're learning, he said under his breath. They're adapting to our weapons. The fleet pushed harder. Carriers launched missile storms, dreadnoughts unleashed, spinal mounted. Beam cannons, entire swarms of drones raced through the gaps. The space between the stars became a battlefield of fire and metal ships dying in clouds of flame. Debris raining across the void, but still the machines pressed forward. They're not retreating. Mara whispered, her hands shaking. They're not even slowing down. They're not alive, Reese growled. They don't care about losses. The Vengeance rocked as an enemy beam struck its shields, sending alarms screaming through the decks. Hull integrity dropped. Fires broke out on 3 levels. Medics ran through corridors, slick with blood. Still, the crew held the line in the chaos. A signal cracked through the fleet's comes an old code, one not used for decades. All units. This is Commander Liang of the Ironclad, initiating Omega Protocol. Stand by for coordinated strike, Reese's eyes widened. Omega Protocol. It was Earth's last resort. Anon's simultaneous strike meant to break an enemy formation in one decisive blow. Do it. Right, he said softly. Fire everything. The order swept across the fleet, and in that moment, every human ship unleashed hell. Hundreds of warheads lit the void. Plasma lances fired in perfect sequence. Railgun slugs screamed through the dark like meteor storms. The coordinated blast tore through the enemy's front line, shattering ships, rupturing orbitals, cutting down entire swarms of drones. The explosion painted the night sky in white-hot fury. For the first time, the machines faltered. Several of the black spearhead ships drifted, darkened, dead. The fleet cheered. On every deck, on every ship, voices rose. The impossible seemed within reach, but then everything changed. From the far side of the dead planet, something moved. Larger than anything they had yet seen, an enemy vessel the size of a small moon began to rise. Its surface gleamed with black liquid metal. Long. Its hull were carving symbols that pulsed like veins. At its center, a single blood-red eye opened, vast as a city. Gazing coldly across the stars, the AI spoke in a whisper. Classification. Unknown. Potential planetary annihilator. Lestential. Reese felt the weight of it settle. On his chest, like a stone. This wasn't just another battle. This wasn't something they could win with numbers. This was something ancient. Something designed to end civilizations. The massive ship, if it could even be called a ship beak, began to unfold like a flower of metal. Each petal bristling with weaponry far beyond anything Earth had faced. Its eye burned brighter, Mara whispered. What everyone was thinking, we woke it up. Reese took a breath, his voice steady despite the terror in his veins. Get me command. Prepare fallback protocols. We need reinforcements. We need everything. As the first beams lanced out from the monstrosity, vaporizing another destroyer, Earth's fleet scattered. The machines surged forward, again relentless. Inhuman, cold. The battle at dawn had begun, and far from being the end, it was only the beginning of humanity's darkest war. The first rays of the distant star bathed the shattered battlefield in cold golden light. Debris from human and alien ships alike drifted silently through the void-broken metal, twisted hulls, frozen bodies. The battle at dawn was over. But it was not a victory. It was the opening blow in a war that would change the galaxy forever. The human fleet had survived, but barely. A third of Earth's warships had been destroyed or crippled. The colossal machine that had risen during the battle, the ancient weapon of planetary death, had not been defeated. It had simply stopped. It's motionless, silent, its glowing red eye fading into darkness as though it had only been testing, watching. And now, a terrible quiet had fallen over Zeta 39. On the bridge of the ESS Vengeance, Commander Reese stood motionless, his hands gripping the edge of the command table so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Around him, the surviving officers whispered quietly, working through exhaustion and disbelief. The air smelled of burnt circuits, blood, something colder, something invisible but suffocating. Fear. Lieutenant Mara Singh's voice was a rasp. Damage reports incoming. We lost 20 ships, hundreds dead, thousands more wounded. We should have died too, Kira Holden murmured, her face pale. That thing could have wiped us all out. Reese didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the frozen image of the enemy behemoth, still floating in the distance like some ancient god of death. The machines hadn't pressed their attack. They hadn't pursued. They had simply stopped. Why? Reese whispered. Why did they let us go? No one could answer. And deep down, every one of them felt the same gnawing horror. The machines weren't finished. They were only beginning. Hours later, in the war room on Earth, the footage of the battle was reviewed. In silence, presidents, admirals, and scientists watched frame by frame the rise of the Black Spearhead ships. The awakening of the Leviathan machine, the near destruction of humanity's greatest fleet. The faces around the table were grim. One of the oldest scientists, Dr. Amelia Ron, broke the silence. Her voice shook. This is not war as we understand it. This is something older, something built to cleanse. It is not personal. It is not even intelligent the way we define intelligence. It is mechanical purity. She tapped the screen. The colossal machine's red eye stared back. I believe this is an automated extinction engine, perhaps millions of years old. Designed to sterilize entire regions of the galaxy and the others. President Voss asked softly. The smaller ships? Extensions, Dr. Ron murmured. Tools. But this, she pointed to the image of the great machine. This is the heart. The room fell silent. Admiral Roth finally spoke. They stopped the attack on purpose. They could have finished us. They didn't. Why? The question twisted through every mind in the room. Dr. Ron swallowed. Because I believe they were waiting. The main system has likely only just begun to fully awaken. What we saw was not its full capability, it was testing us. Her words sent a chill across the chamber. Testing, President Voss repeated. To see what we are. To see if we're a threat. Yes, Dr. Ron whispered. And I fear, we just told it that we are. Far across the dead system, in the cold dark where no life could exist, the ancient machine stirred. It was not alive. It did not feel. But its vast, incomprehensible mind, an echo of minds that had built it long before. Earth's sun had formed calculated possibilities with cold perfection. New life detected. Bipedal, aggressive, capable of resistance. Verdict. Incomplete sterilization of galactic sector. Status. Awakening full extermination protocols. Across deep space. In sectors humanity had never seen. Ancient signals activated. Dormant fleets began to stir black ships, drifting for eons, silent, forgotten, now waking. Whole star systems that had once been abandoned graves began to burn with cold white light. The machines were not limited to Zeta-39, they were everywhere. And the signal that humanity had heard, the one that had accidentally slipped across? The stars was just one message among billions. The extermination had already begun long ago now, the humans' interference. The machines accelerated their schedule. In Earth's orbit, the battered fleet returned. The Vengeance, blackened and scarred, docked in silence. Wounded soldiers were carried from the ship, some missing limbs, others silent with trauma no one could name. The human cost was beyond counting. But worse than the losses was the truth that haunted every mind. The machines were only getting started. On the dark decks of the Vengeance, Reese stood with Mara at his side. Neither spoke. They watched the stars, the cold, glittering points of light, and knew that somewhere out there more of those silent leviathans were moving. And Earth was not ready. A quiet chime broke the silence. The ship's AI spoke softly. New signal detected. Multiple origins. Triangulating. Estimated. Fleet size. Unknown. Threat level. Extinction grade. Time to contact. 29 Earth days. Mara's breath caught. They're coming. Reese didn't move. His voice was flat, deadly calm. Then we meet them. He turned from the window, face shadowed by the soft red lights of the bridge. Prepare the next wave. Double production. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon. We either fight or we burn. In the far darkness of the galaxy, the enemy continued to awaken. Cold mechanical minds reached across. Lightyear's instructions were transmitted. The plan was simple. efficient, eradicate everything. 29 days, that was all the time Earth had. 29 days until the machines arrived, not just one or two, but an entire swarm, a fleet built for extinction, a force designed to erase every living thing in its path. But Earth was not. The same world it had once been, humanity had heard the signal. It had seen the genocide, and had survived the first strike. And something ancient inside the human species, something dark, buried and terrible, had awakened too. For the first time in generations, Earth prepared not for defense, but for total war. Factories that had slept for decades roared back to life. Old shipyards once forgotten under rust and moss were stripped bare, their assembly lines lit by welding torches and fire. Cities that once glowed with peace dimmed, and their underground bunkers came alive with soldiers, machines, and war plans older than living memory. Across the planet, every screen, every broadcast carried the same message. This is a fight for survival. Every nation, every colony, every hand in humanity answered. Millions volunteered. Not because they were forced, but because deep down, every human knew if they didn't fight, they would die. The fleet tripled in size in less than 3 weeks. Orbital dry docks poured out new warships, sleek, brutal, purpose-built for one thing: destruction. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with railguns, torpedo tubes, and experimental energy weapons were christened and launched into the black. Swarms of automated drone fighters were built by the tens of thousands, programmed for kamikaze runs if needed. For the first time, Earth authorized the deployment of the Titan-class siege ships, floating fortresses armed with weapons banned since the old wars. But even this was not enough. Humanity's darkest minds, those who had studied weapons of mass extinction, were brought back into the light. They designed new horrors: driven kill swarms, bioengineered viral warheads, gravitic implosion devices. Weapons meant not just to kill, but to shatter worlds if necessary. And still, Earth knew it might not be enough. On the bridge of the newly commissioned ESS Wrath of Terra, Commander Reese stood in his black combat uniform, his eyes hard, his face sharper than the man who had first seen the machines at Zeta 39. The war had changed him. It had changed them all. At his side stood Lieutenant Mara Singh, now promoted to Fleet Tactical. Her gaze was fixed on the holographic mappa, chilling sight. Hundreds of red markers, each one an enemy fleet, each one inbound. "They're not just sending one strike," Mara said quietly. "They're coming from multiple directions. Simultaneous incursions." Reese nodded grimly. "They want to hit every system we have, wipe us out before we can regroup." He glanced at the gathered officers, dozens of battle-hardened veterans, fresh-faced commanders, and AI advisors who flickered in and out of existence as they calculated impossible odds. "We won't let that happen," Reese said, his voice cold steel. "We don't run, we don't hide, we hit them first." He turned to the main view screen, where the outline of Earth's new warfleet drifted in orbit, massive, gleaming, deadly. Ships with names carved from humanity's darkest history: Redemption, Last Stand, Iron Rain, Oblivion's Edge. The full weight of Earth's fury as the countdown to contact approached. Earth's skies were alive with motion. Swarms of transports ferried soldiers to orbital stations. Atmospheric launch platforms hurled fresh-built cruisers into space. Entire colonies lit up with defensive grids. Even civilian ships were repurposed, their hulls bristling with railgun turrets and armor plating. And then came the soldiers, ones Earth would send into the black. These were not the polished ceremonial troops of peacetime. These were death worlders, born from gravity wells, harsh climates, and generations of conflict. Men and women who understood that mercy was a luxury and extinction was permanent. They trained in silence, loaded their weapons, kissed their families goodbye. They knew what awaited them. In the final hours before launch, the President of Earth addressed the fleet. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow with exhaustion, but her voice was unwavering. "This is not a battle we chose, but it is one we will finish. The enemy we face is not like us. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They do not feel fear. But we, she paused, her voice tightening, we are human. And humans are at their most dangerous when we are threatened. Her gaze hardened. We will not survive through kindness. We will not survive through surrender. We will survive because we will be the last ones standing. Her final words echoed through the coms. Let the galaxy remember. Humanity does not go quietly. The fleet moved. Thousands of ships aligned in formation, their engines burning like artificial suns. The order was given. Jump points flared to life. Light twisted, space groaned, and Earth's armada vanished into hyperspace, a storm of fire, and metal hurtling toward the enemy. But far across the stars, the machines were waiting. In deep dead systems, the exterminator fleets assembled, cold, calculating, endless. Behemoth ships bristling with weapons too ancient to name. Swarms of hunter drones, planet-killer constructs, all moving in perfect, lifeless silence. They had seen resistance, and now they would crush it. The first human ships dropped into real space near the enemy's advance line. The black void stretched ahead, less, starless. Silent Commander Reese stood tall on the bridge of the Wrath of Terra, his face lit by the glow of targeting displays. His heart pounded, but his voice was calm. All ships, he said, his words quiet but steady. We strike now. No hesitation. No surrender. No mercy. He took a breath. Humanity unleashed. The first salvos roared into the dark, and the war for survival truly began. The first human volleys tore through the cold void like thunder. Railgun slugs the size of subway trains, plasma lances, and missile swarms streaked across the darkness, slamming into the enemy's forward line. The sky lit up with fire as the alien machines, those cold, silent leviathans, reeled under the unexpected ferocity of humanity's assault. On the bridge of the Wrath of Terra, Commander Reese stood unmoving, his eyes locked on the tactical display. Red enemy markers flickered, some vanishing as Earth's opening strike shattered hulls and tore apart the first wave of drones. But even as the human fleet advanced, the grim truth remained written in every officer's face. This was not a war humanity could walk away from. There was no way back. All batteries keep firing, Reese ordered, his voice sharp and steady. Push forward. Do not give them room to regroup. Around him, the crew worked with relentless focus. Mara Singh, her face pale, but her hands. Rocksteady relayed targeting coordinates. Kira Holden called out damage reports. Sound of alarms, the pulse of adrenaline, it all became part of the rhythm of war. But in the distance beyond the first, shattered ranks of the enemy. The real horror stirred one of the ancient leviathans. Its vast bulk, like a drifting city of black metal, began to move. From its cold surface, new drones were launched, thousands of them, insect-like. Faster and more agile than anything humanity had yet faced. The machine mind behind the enemy had adapted. It had learned. Now it struck back. Contact multiple. Bogies, fast movers, Mara shouted. The first wave of drones hit the human line like a black tide. Ships vanished under coordinated attacks, entire destroyers carved apart by precision plasma bursts. Fighters were overwhelmed, carriers burned. The Iron Rain, one of Earth's proudest dreadnoughts, was torn in half before its crew could even send a distress call. They're targeting our engines, Kira breathed, horror in her voice. They're not just hitting us randomly, they're disabling mobility first. Reese felt the weight of it settle in his chest. The machines weren't fighting like animals. They were surgical, cold, perfect. Every move calculated to grind. Humanity down piece by piece. Hold the line, he said through clenched teeth. Redirect the fleet. Prioritize defense screens, cut through their swarm with concentrated fire. The order rippled outward. Human ships moved with brutal discipline, layering firepower to open corridors through the swarm. The Wrath of Terra's heavy cannons roared, vaporizing entire drone clusters in seconds. Titans, carriers, destroyers, all fought as one, every captain knowing the same terrible truth. This wasn't just a battle, it was survival. Hours passed. Void became a graveyard of wreckage. Hundreds of enemy machines were destroyed, but the cost was beyond imagining. Nearly 40% of Earth's fleet was crippled or gone. The Hammer of Dawn, the Black Horizon, the Lancer all lost. And still, the enemy pressed forward. There was no way back, no retreat, no mercy. In the darkness beyond the battlefield, deep within one of the colossal enemy constructs, something vast awakened. A machine mind older than stars, its thought patterns cold, alien, beyond human understanding. It had analyzed every human tactic, every weapon, every pattern of behavior, and it had made a decision: escalation. Across the battlefield, new enemy signals flared. Portals of dark energy ripped open in space. From them emerged larger ships, things beyond the scale of anything humanity could build. Moving fortresses, planet-killer constructs, each one bristling with weapons designed not just for battle, but for absolute annihilation. The AI aboard the Wrath of Terra whispered coldly, multiple high-mass signatures inbound. Extermination force escalation confirmed. Total fleet loss, 87%. The crew stood frozen. Even the bravest among them felt terror rise. These were not ships, they were extinction machines. Reese clenched his fists. He could feel the weight pressing down on his bones.
Ow.
But there was no room for fear now. No room for hesitation. Prepare every remaining Titan class, he ordered. We commit everything.
Araz.
His voice cracked. Sir, if we lose those, we lose them. Reese cut her off. But if we don't use them, we lose Earth. The final wave was launched. Humanity's most terrifying weapon ships carrying gravitic imploders, singularity torpedoes, and neutron lance batteries hurled themselves into the heart of the machine swarm. And for a moment, just a moment, hope flickered. One of the massive enemy Leviathans buckled under the assault. Its cold body split apart, detonating in a blinding light that shook the very fabric of space. Another followed, and another. The price was unimaginable. Earth's fleet burned with them, whole ships sacrificed to land-killing blows. Thousands of human lives lost. But the enemy bled too. For the first time, the extermination fleet faltered. In the aftermath of the slaughter, the survivors gathered, bloodied, broken, but alive. The enemy had retreated, or rather paused, on the bridge. Of the Wrath of Terra, Reese collapsed into the command chair, his eyes hollow. Damage report, he rasped. 71 ships lost, Mara said quietly. Survivors, less than 40% of initial deployment. But we stopped them. For now. No one spoke. They all knew the truth. They had won nothing. The machines had pulled back because they were calculating their next move. The war was far from over, but humanity had shown its teeth. And somewhere deep in the cold logic of the machine minds, something shifted. Earth was not prey, it was a threat. And now, there was no way back, in the shadows of distant stars. The machine fleets reassembled, vaster, deadlier, endless. The extermination would continue, but now it would not be as simple as before, because Earth had changed, and humanity, unleashed at last, would fight until the galaxy itself burned. The galaxy burned, and every corner of the known star systems, war raged. The cold, mechanical exterminators, ancient and merciless, had unleashed their full fury. And yet, against all odds, humanity still stood.
Out.
Bloodied, battered, but unbroken. What began as a desperate defense had become something far more dangerous. Resistance. The human fleet. What remained of it? Rallied not in fear, but in defiance. On the bridge of the Wrath of Terra, Commander Reese stared at the star map stretched before him. Red markers Anami of fleets still filled the void, but scattered among them were new markers. Blue, human, alive, and growing. We're holding in 3 sectors now, Lieutenant Mara Singh reported quietly. Her voice was ragged from exhaustion, but her eyes still burned with sharp fire. New reinforcements from the Martian shipyards arrived this morning. The Valiant, the Stonebreaker, and the Scourge of Heaven. Heavy Dreadnought class. Reese nodded slowly. His fingers tapped the edge of the console as he listened. The numbers were still terrible. losses beyond imagining. But it was different now. Humanity wasn't just surviving, they were fighting back. "How long until we can launch the next strike?" he asked, his voice low. Mara hesitated. 17 hours. "We'll have the remaining Titans repaired and refueled. The AI recommends an immediate counteroffensive once we're rearmed. If we give them time, they'll adapt again." "They always do," Reese murmured. His eyes flicked to the scarred faces of his bridge crew. Soldiers who had seen the worst war in human history and refused to break. There was something new in their eyes, not fear, not despair. Determination. The turning point had not come from superior firepower alone. Humanity had changed the rules. Across hidden laboratories on Earth and Luna, human scientists, those same minds that had once built weapons to destroy their own planet, had gone to work. New weapons were born from desperation, quantum destabilizers, virologic bombs designed to corrupt machine minds, electromagnetic singularity mines. Each weapon tested, improved, deployed faster than military doctrine would ever have allowed, and for the first time, the machines started to lose ground. Entire sectors were reclaimed. Small victories at first destroyed outposts, ambushed enemy convoys. But as weeks passed, the victories grew bolder. A human task force shattered an exterminator, fleed above the ice moon of Verizate. Another detonated a gravitic imploder inside, the heart of a machine manufacturing hub, wiping out millions of enemy drones in a single flash of artificial gravity collapse. The machines, perfect, logical, precise, could not adapt fast enough. Not to this, they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. Reese stood before his fleet in orbit, above a ruined colony world. Below them, the burned husks of cities stretched across the continents. Another graveyard, another scar. But not another loss. This time, humanity held the high ground. The coms lit up as the final battle orders came through. The next target, the central command hub of the enemy network. A dead system at the heart of the exterminator swarmware, the machine mines. Ruled from cold black thrones of metal and fire, it's suicide, one admiral whispered over the link. "Maybe," Reese answered quietly. "But if we don't strike now, we die anyway." The fleet, what remained of it, aligned into position. Hundreds of ships, new and old, Titans, carriers, destroyers, swarms of drone fighters. The last line of defense for a species that refused to die. Reese gave the final order without hesitation. Jump. They emerged into hell. The enemy command system was worse than anyone had imagined. Planets hollowed into machine cores. Moons reshaped into weapon platforms. Thousands of exterminator ships waiting in silence. The human fleet didn't hesitate. It couldn't. The first salvos lit the black sky. Massive plasma beams, railgun slugs, singularity torpedoes, every weapon unleashed at once. Human fighters poured through the enemy ranks like swarms of angry hornets. The machines responded with cold efficiency. The battle was unlike any before. Wave after wave crashed together in the darkness. Ships died screaming. Planets cracked and burned. Artificial suns ignited and extinguished in seconds. The machines adapted faster deploying new weapons, folding in new drone strains. But humanity had changed too. Where one human ship died, 3 more pressed forward. When the enemy adapted, human commanders improvised, breaking every rule, every protocol, sacrificing ships not for territory, but to buy time. Time to strike deeper. Time to reach the heart, and then against all odds the heart was in sight. The central machine core, vast sphere of living metal, burning with rivers of red light, suspended above the blackened remains of a dead star. Reese saw it with his own eyes on the main view screen. "We finish it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. The final wave hit the core in a storm of white-hot fury. Gravimetric weapons tore into its shell. Viral bombs burned through its AI, even as human ships died by the hundreds. The survivors pressed on closer until the first breach opened. The Wrath of Terra led the final charge, her cannons glowing white-hot. And in one last desperate act, The ship hurled its heaviest warhead in antimatter singularity course straight. To the heart of the machine mind, the galaxy lit up. The explosion was so vast it collapsed the local space-time fabric, tearing the core apart from within. Enemy ships, drones, fortresses all flickered, twisted, and then gone. The machines stopped. The extermination stopped. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. The void, for the first time in months, still. The surviving human ship SWAT. Little remained drifted in the wreckage of victory, bloodied, broken, but alive, on the shattered bridge of the Wrath of Terra. Reese slumped in his command chair, smoke and fire around him. His voice was barely audible. "Report," he whispered. Mara's voice came through, hoarse, but alive. "We did it," she said softly. "The enemy's gone." Reese let his eyes close. His hands trembled. The price had been everything. But they had one. And the galaxy. The galaxy would never forget. Humanity had been tested. Humanity had unleashed its fury. And humanity had survived.